No NBA team is perfectly constructed, and as the season progresses, teams tend to be able to identify the areas they struggle in the most. In the offseason, teams address these needs in free agency and in the draft, but obviously while the season is underway, they only really have one way to address these kind of things, and that's through trades. For the topic of today's video, we'll be going through every single NBA team and identifying one player that the team should look to shop before the trade deadline, with reasoning varying from case to case. Some teams need a big move, while others may only be looking for smaller moves. This video is going to cover the Eastern Conference teams, and the next video will run through the Western Conference teams, so stay tuned for that as well. Before we start though, it turns out about 67% of you watching right now aren't even subscribed to the channel, so please, if you enjoy the content, consider hitting the subscribe button, as not only does it help out a ton, but I would also very much appreciate it. Now with that being said, let's begin. Going in alphabetical order, we'll start with the Atlanta Hawks, and the player they should look to trade is John Collins. Collins has really emerged in a big way since he was drafted 4 years ago, and his level of production should warrant a big payday. The issue with this, however, is that the Hawks don't seem to be willing to want to pay him at all. They've held contract negotiations that haven't gotten anywhere. Collins has not been happy with how those negotiations went down. They paid a player $20 million per year this offseason that plays his position, and they still have Trae Young's big contract extension coming up as well, so it seems like it's in everyone's best interest to try to move on from John Collins and garner some value in return for him. Next up is the Boston Celtics, and the player they should shop before the trade deadline is Kemba Walker. Walker has been struggling with injuries, and in the games he has played this season, he just hasn't looked all that great. He's averaging near career lows across the board, and his skill set overlaps with the strengths of budding stars Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, while failing to mask the team's weaknesses. There have been reports of the Celtics looking to make a move for more wing depth and big men, and Kemba's contract could be the key to bringing in pretty good value in those areas. The next team up is the Brooklyn Nets, and the player they should look to shop is Spencer Dinwiddie. I know Dinwiddie is done for the season because of his ACL injury, but he does still have value for when he returns, and the Nets need reinforcements as soon as possible, which Dinwiddie obviously can't provide. The Nets' big three of Harden, Durant, and Irving are as talented as a trio as we've ever seen, but the rest of the roster leaves a lot to be desired, and there are a ton of holes that need to be filled. Dinwiddie would definitely garner some value on the trade market, and they should use this opportunity quickly so the Nets can be fully ready for a playoff run. The next team up is the Charlotte Hornets, and the player they should look to trade is Devonte Graham. A lot of things factor into this pick, and the biggest and most obvious one is the emergence of LaMelo Ball so quickly. Ball looks more and more comfortable running the show with each passing game, his production continues to improve, and he's just been flat out better than Graham this year, who plays the same position. Combine that with the fact that Graham is on the last year of his contract with the Hornets, unlikely to pay him the money that he'll be looking for in free agency, and it all makes it a pretty obvious choice. The next team up is the Chicago Bulls, and the player they should look to trade is Zach Lavine. Now, maybe they shouldn't be trying to go out of their way to trade him, but they should at least see if they can land a pretty hefty package in return for him, because his value might never be higher than where it is right now based on how well he's playing. He wants to play on a winning team, and the Bulls are 5 games below 500 right now, with their playoff hopes looking kind of grim. So it just makes sense to at least test the waters and see if they can get a team to send them a big return in value. The next team up is the Cleveland Cavaliers, and the player they should look to trade is Andre Drummond. Drummond is once again putting up massive rebounding numbers, his per-game averages look impressive, and this should result in contenders in need of big men to come calling for him. The Cavs also just traded for Jarrett Allen, and his development should be the priority, so moving Drummond opens up more opportunity for him, while also getting some worthwhile value in return that more so fits to the timeline that the team is currently on. Next up is the Detroit Pistons, and the player that they should look to trade is Blake Griffin. The Pistons just moved on from Derrick Rose, they moved on from Andre Drummond last season, and now the last veteran player left that needs to be moved is Blake Griffin. Griffin is nowhere close to the player that he once was, but he also doesn't really fit the timeline that the Pistons are on as they focus on a rebuild. He won't be easy to move by any means because of his contract, but the possibility of getting anything in return for him at this point would be considered a win for the team. Next up is the Indiana Pacers, and the choice here isn't a flashy one by any means, but it's Doug McDermott. The Pacers should be pretty content where they're at right now, and they will only get better once Caris LeVert and TJ Warren return to the team. McDermott is an expendable player at a crowded position in the front court, while also being on an expiring contract, but at the same time, his shooting ability would likely garner some interest in the trade market. It's not a team-changing move by any means, but little moves like this can definitely help down the line. The next team up is the Miami Heat, and the player they should look to trade is Kendrick Nunn. The Heat may have gotten a bit carried away with their valuation of young assets, and now having missed out on James Harden, they still find themselves near the bottom of the Eastern Conference standings. Nunn was a pleasant surprise as a rookie and is still playing relatively well scoring the ball this year, but the team also has Tyler Hero, Jimmy Butler, and Goran Dragic in the backcourt doing similar things, and there are a lot of other parts of the team that need to be bolstered, so Nunn could end up being the piece used to address those issues to get them back into the playoff picture. Next up is the Milwaukee Bucks, and the player they should look to trade is Donte Divincenzo. Divincenzo has been a very good two-way role player for the team this season, shooting the ball at a 41% clip from three, playing tough defense, and doing a lot of the little things well also. But the Bucks should be looking to go all in on a championship with Giannis, and he's one of their most appealing assets. They already tried to trade him once for Bogdan Bogdanovic in the offseason before that deal fell through, and something tells me they would try to do it again if given the opportunity. The next team up is the New York Knicks, and the player they should look to trade is Elfrid Payton. The Knicks just went out and traded for Derrick Rose at the point guard spot, they have a rising young player in Emmanuel Quickley at the point guard spot as well, and Payton being in the lineup night after night is not only redundant, but not exactly helping the team in their quest for a playoff push either, so in my eyes, it's for their best interest to move on from him. The next team up is the Orlando Magic, and the player they should look to trade is Mo Bamba. I discussed this in my last video, but it's very apparent that Bamba just is not in the team's plans anymore. He's the third string center getting pretty much no minutes, and his development has been stunted every year because of how he's been handled. He was picked 6th overall back in 2018 and was seen as a player with tons of defensive potential, but the Magic have never really given him the opportunities to grow, so it would be best for both him and the team to allow him to get a fresh start elsewhere. The next team up is the Philadelphia 76ers, and the player they should look to move at the deadline is Danny Green. Green brings championship experience and is definitely good for the guys in the locker room, however on the court, he's been incredibly hit or miss, and his contract makes him viable to put into trade packages to address the things they actually need. The team lacks playmaking outside of Ben Simmons, and could use a backup point guard who can actually run the offense in his absence, and that's the kind of player Green could be used to acquire. Next up is the Toronto Raptors, and the player they should look to trade is Aron Baynes. Baynes has struggled a ton as the team's starting center, and backup Chris Boucher has been having a massive breakout season. The Raptors clearly need an upgrade in their front court, Baynes is not cutting it at the moment, and Boucher is ready for a bigger role. And finally, the last team is the Washington Wizards, and the player they should look to trade is Bradley Beal. The Wizards are a complete nightmare right now, and even though Beal has remained completely loyal to the franchise and insists that he wants to stay there to help make them a contender, it just doesn't look like that's going to be possible. He's at the height of his prime right now, playing the best basketball of his life, and he deserves better than this. And the bright side is that his price tag in a trade would bring in a lot of valuable assets for Washington to help move them forward. And with that being said, that's all I have for you today. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and comment down below who you think should get traded from any of these teams. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all next time.